And I call on Deputy Maureen O'Sullivan to move for leave to introduce her bill.
Thank you, Ceann Comhairle. First of all, I want to acknowledge and thank those who worked hard on this bill. Maeve Ní Leahan in the Oireachtas Library for her research paper, David Dodd, who drafted the amendment bill, the Office of the Parliamentary Legal Advisor, and Kieran and my own office who worked on this also. Ireland has a dark past when it comes to children. We've had the industrial schools, the mother and baby homes, other institutions where children were abused physically, emotionally and sexually. And then we had the abuse of children by sports coaches, some of whom were convicted, brought to court, imprisoned, but others, like George Gibney, never faced justice. And we have cases of abuse in families, by parents and by other relatives. And then this week, another case, 11 people arrested in Limerick, alleged exploitation of children. And we have seen more and more of that. And what it means is we're seeing children being robbed of their childhood, their innocence, their sense of self-esteem and dignity and their self-worth. Now, there has been progress in Ireland in relation to protection. We've had the children's referendum. We have the Ombudsman for Children, we have procedures and policies and guidelines, we have Child First, we have organisations like Childline. But there are countries, many countries in the world, where there is no protection of children, where children are used and abused horrifically, where children as young as 4 and 5 years of age are being raped. In those countries, children are being abducted and being trafficked for the sex industry, to be used in brothels and to be used in pornographic films and for cyber sex. And this abuse is being done by men predominantly, but some women. Men and women from Ireland, from the UK, from Australia, from the US. Hundreds and thousands of so-called sex tourists in those many countries where there is no child protection, no child welfare, only help from organisations like the Preda Foundation. So my amendment bill seeks to protect the children in those countries from being used sexually by people convicted in Irish courts of child sexual abuse. And what it's doing, it does that by restricting their ability to travel to do so. In 2016, almost 800 registered sex offenders in Australia travelled to those countries. So Australia brought in an act to prevent that happening in future. They were the first country to do so. Global studies have found an expansion in sexual exploitation of children in travel and tourism, and that expansion is outpacing every attempt to respond at national and international level. There have been court cases of Western men convicted of buying children for sex and pornography. These crimes are unthinkable, inexcusable. The government said in a reply to me that they want to combat child sexual abuse in every way possible. It was discussed earlier today at Leaders. My amendment bill will empower judges to restrict, where appropriate, the travel of those convicted of child sexual offences, where it is deemed that travel could pose a risk to vulnerable persons in jurisdictions outside the state, which do not have adequate child protection and child welfare legislation. It's amending the 2001 Act in a technical way to make specific changes on a case-by-case basis, and it will allow judges to make travel restrictions or not, depending on the circumstances of individual cases. The judge will assess the risk posed by a convicted individual and restrict travel where necessary. But the judge can also consider if the offender has engaged in any meaningful way with the rehabilitation process. And I want to acknowledge the processes that there are in rehabilitation, prison-based, community-based, and I know the Gardaí and TUSLA and Probation Service work together on these risk assessment plans for those who genuinely want to engage. So this amendment will assist that process as a person in recovery from alcoholism is advised not to go near a pub. So those convicted of child sexual offences are being helped not to go to countries where that is very possible. Also, those who travel to exploit children are very likely to continue that exploitation when they come back to their country of origin. And then finally, it's about limiting, restricting travel, and so it respects the right to travel that is in our Constitution. There are minimal changes involved in my amendment to the 2001 bill, but those minimal changes will make a difference. It's about protecting children in other countries in the way in which we protect children here. It will mean Ireland will be the first country in the EU to do this, so I do hope that it will be supported.
Thank you very much, Deputy. Is the bill being opposed? No.